For those of you who don't know, there's this funny little thing out there called Vore. A vorerophiliac is basically a person who is very fascinated, possibly even to a sexual degree, with watching living things get eaten. There's hardcore Vore, stuff like a lion dismembering its prey with blood spraying everywhere, or the more commonly liked softcore Vore, which simply involves someone being swallowed whole by someone or something larger than them without being chewed up, and they still wind up killed by the stomach acid. I absolutely hate Vore, but from what I can gather from a few people I know who actually are into it, I think I'll elaborate a bit on why. I guess they like the feeling of being squeezed and cradled in something much larger than them, almost like being in a womb a second time. In fact, there's even something of a bizarre offshoot of Vore called unbirth, which involves going back inside a womb. You get the idea. Strangely though, there are a lot of people who even like the thought of getting burned alive by stomach acid. This is pretty hard to explain, but I'll try. To have your skin melted off and your muscles become loose like spaghetti, however long it would last before all your nerves died, making your body completely numb, would be extremely painful. For most of us, naturally this is a bad thing that we want to avoid even thinking about. But there are those who don't look at it that way. You know how some people have trouble sufficiently feeling much of anything, so they get a kick out of hurting themselves in small ways just for the sake of desperately forcing their bodies to feel something? They don't care if it hurts. For some of them, there is no nice or bad feeling, they just want to be stimulated, period. And the more powerful the stimulation is, the better. And for them, to be ripped apart by stomach acid would be like a climactic symphony of spectacular, unparalleled stimulation that nothing else they would ever feel could compare to, as all their body erupts with unbelievably intense, powerful feeling. Which I think is pretty fragging stupid, but hey, more power to you. Vore has become excessively popular on DeviantArt, which makes me kinda sad, but whatever. There is a very popular artist, Carbo, spelled with a K, who has done a lot for vorerophiliacs. I love this guy's art, well, sort of. The material scares the piss out of me more often than not, but I love his technique. He makes beautiful scenery, rich with details and lively colors, and I've gotta say, he is immensely talented, regardless of how he uses that talent. His little world called Felarya has grown and become very popularized over the years, and there are many artists and writers who have populated it with our own characters, giving them their own stories. Felarya has a surprisingly rich mythology, and there's a whole universe of things that extend from it. It's downright crazy. He's given them an escape where they can frolic and explore, make friends, and of course, eat each other. At this point, he might as well make an MMORPG out of it. Anywho, I'm here to review one of my favorite stories anywhere, written by DeviantArt member French Snack. Lost in Felarya follows the misadventures of what starts out as a couple of hundred people from our world whose plane somehow gets warped to Felarya. They desperately try to find some way to get back home to our world, or at the very least find some cover. Everything in this world is out to eat them, and the longer they stay, the more of them die gruesomely. As the group keeps getting smaller, and even gets separated at some points into even smaller subgroups, the few that remain live in constant fear and silence as they do everything they can to escape this beautiful but unforgiving world. This is a very engaging, brilliantly written story. As the roster of characters inevitably shrinks, the stories of those who are left gradually become more and more personal and increasingly significant. The people on the plane come from many different places. They speak different languages, have varying age groups, different ways of thinking, and their backgrounds and the lives they had before they spontaneously were sent here to die are explored in great detail. Between certain chapters, the characters take turns being the focus of the story. It's not about one guy or two guys you root for. No one particular person is singularly focused on for too long. And most, if not all of these characters are very compelling in their own ways, whether you love them and want to see them make it, or despise them, and actually want some giant babe to eat them. The story also features many of the creatures created by Carbo and his fans. The author handles this material delicately, and emphasizes that most of the Felaryans aren't really vicious by nature. They just don't see how there's anything wrong with eating us. They're so naive and destructive, and some of them even try to make nice with our heroes before ultimately killing them. Regardless, this is not a story that exploits the characters in crude ways or tries to promote the act of eating someone alive as sexy in any way to cater to horny fanbrats at all. If anything, it's appropriately scary and does show this whole Vore thing in a deservingly negative light. Never to a point where it feels downright condescending to Vore fans, it's just in a matter-of-fact way. Some of the author's fans wish stories like this were more lighthearted, making this whole Vore thing look fun somehow, so they don't have to feel bad for the people who get eaten and, well, die while the viewer jerks off. I personally think this story is unique and really appreciate the depth he gives these characters, showing just how valuable they are and almost inevitably making the reader feel like they've actually lost something when that life and everything it could have led to is erased. In order to give them that feeling, the author needs to have given the reader something that can be taken away to begin with, which he does very meticulously. Because the characters are so compelling, there will be many points where, if you actually do like them, you will be very miffed when some ignorant giant mermaid or something goes on a killing spree and the body count piles just a little bit higher. I found myself sad, even furious, pretty often as I read this, seeing some of my favorite characters disappear. There was one scene later in the story that was so intensely suspenseful that my body was in pain as everything raced through me, and when the scene was over I was exhausted. That's how powerful this story is. The ending is very satisfying and a lot of surprising things happen throughout the whole thing. This story could easily make an amazing thriller or horror film, maybe even two. It's gut-wrenching at times, but so intelligently written and lovingly crafted that I'm glad I read it, even if the source material disgusts me. This is one of the most unforgiving, emotionally powerful things I have ever read, and I feel like I took a beating just reading it. Whether you like Vore or find it disgusting, this is an all-around sympathetic read that shouldn't be missed. Doodles!